Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? It's proclaimed the greatest radio show.
Welcome, fans, to another episode of The Spread. I'm your host, Jim Sella, in studio with Jay Dash and Big Easy. We're going to keep moving along with our fantasy football rankings. Dash works hard on this crap. We got 101.
Unless your computer blows up.
It might blow up. We got 101 to 125? 150? What are we doing?
125.
101 to 125 for you.
Yeah.
Who do we got at 101?
Well, we ended the last segment with number 100, and that was quarterback Matt Stafford. And at 101 here, we're going to stick with quarterback Eli Manning of the New York Giants.
Eli is now saying he doesn't want to be the highest paid quarterback in the league.
He doesn't want to. He wants to be the 30th highest.
Yeah. I think his agent was the one that really came out and said it. Obviously, everybody wants to make as much money as possible. And Eli's got 2 Super Bowls, so he deserves a good contract.
Please believe. But he had 4,410 yards last season with 30 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. He had 5 300-yard games, including 391 at St. Louis and 429 versus Philly. And that came over the last 2 games of the season, so he did it big late. He had 280 more yards in 6 of his last 8 games, 9 multi-TD games, and he had 32 or more attempts in each of his last 9 games, 40 or more in 6 of those. He did have that 1 TD and 5 interception game versus SF, though, and that really hurt his fantasy season last year. But I like the weapons they have around Eli this year, and I think he's going to have a bounce-back year. I mean, you got Odell Beckham Jr. and Victor Cruz is coming back. You still have Ruben Randall and Preston Parker, and then they brought in James Jones as well. Larry Donnell played pretty well at tight end for him last season. They have Daniel Fells. And then they have 2 good running backs in Rashad Jennings and Andre Williams. And then they brought in Shane Vereen for the passing game as well. So they put a lot of weapons around Eli here this year. And I think he's going to have a big year.
I wouldn't even call it a bounce-back year because he didn't have a terrible year last year. But I definitely think he can improve this year over last year, especially if Victor Cruz is healthy. He's going to give him mad points out of the slot.
Yeah.
Dude's like a fill-in spot starter, if you ask me. He's never been
fantasy?
reliable fantasy.
Yeah, definitely. But, I mean, he's going to have a better year than last year when you give him all these weapons.
We'll find out. I'm not quite sure about that.
At 101, if you already got stacked on receivers and running backs, he'd give you good value.
Yeah, I had Matt Stafford ahead of him. We did Tony Romo right before that. Would you rather have both of those guys easy?
Yeah.
Definitely?
Easily.
Okay. There you go. Take it from easy. Take those guys before they're off the board because you don't want Eli.
I like
Dude,
those. I like
the
that.
last
I like
segment
the
you were
rankings.
on, you were talking about Eli Manning having a big year. Remember?
Yeah, I know, but not fantasy.
Well,
You can win football games and not do fantasy.
Look, 4,400 yards and 30 TDs last season. If he can improve on that in any kind of way, you're having a pretty big season.
Right.
All right, 102, Devin Funchess, the wide receiver from Carolina.
Been a little banged up. Nothing serious, though.
Yeah, he's actually not going to play this Saturday, but he is expected back this coming week. And he already played a little bit in an earlier preseason game, but this is their second-round pick in this year's draft. And with Kelvin Benjamin done for the season, this is a guy that had 73 catches on 146 targets for over 1,000 yards with 9 touchdowns last season. Somebody got to fill in that role, and Devin Funchess is the most likely player to do so. He's 6'4", 232 pounds, but he's just not Kelvin Benjamin, first of all. Kelvin Benjamin is a beast.
He's an
Devin
athlete.
Funchess is big and slow. He's more like a tight end almost. So I really don't see him stepping in as the number 1 target necessarily. Greg Olsen, I think. Look, he had 84 receptions for 122 yards last year and 6 touchdowns over 1,000 yards. I think he'll be targeted more, and then Funchess is going to have a good season still, though.
Ted Ginn, he's played better in Carolina than he's played anywhere else in the league, so he might actually have an opportunity to put up a little bit of points with the injury to Benjamin, but nobody on this team has the size and athleticism that Benjamin did at the wide receiver or tight end position, so you're right. I bet you Olsen ends up being the number 1 pass catcher for the team, overall, and then it's probably be a mix between Funchess and Ted Ginn.
I don't know. I think Funchess would definitely turn into the number 2 target there. Ted Ginn, I've never been high on. Really.
Me either, but he had a good year last year.
I tell you what,
Carolina.
though, they got Jared Boykin out there and Corey Brown. One of those 2 could step up. I was a Boykin fan when he was in Green Bay, and they still have Jericho Cotchery out there. I think he's going to take a step down. His targets are going to go somewhere. So Funchess is going to be involved in this offense, because really he's the guy that has to step up. They can't trust Ted Ginn to be their number one receiver. 103, Danny Woodhead, running back from San Diego.
Woodhead.
Now, he only played 3 games last season because he broke his fibula. I know how that feels.
Fibula.
It sucks. But he had 38 yards, 5 receptions for 34 yards, so he didn't really do anything. But if you look back to his previous season, 2013, he had 76 receptions for 605 yards. Now, Ryan Matthews is gone, but they drafted Melvin Gordon, obviously. He's probably going to be the feature back. But Matthews was the feature back too, and Danny Woodhead still put up big numbers in that offense. In fact, in 2013, I believe Matthews had over 1,200 yards rushing. So you can see Danny Woodhead can still do that if there's a 1,000-yard running back ahead of him.
I heard Woodhead looks good in camp too. He looks pretty healed, nothing lingering. He's not limping around or anything. He's making good, crisp cuts, and that's what he needs to do, get in the open field, make guys miss, and try to get to the end zone, because that's where he's strongest.
Well, coming in the last season, I was really high on Woodhead because he had a huge year the year before, and it didn't really work out for him. But it really all depends on Melvin Gordon. If he really turns into a 3-down back and works well out of the passing game and takes time away from everybody else, maybe Woodhead doesn't have the greatest season like he did in 2013. But, I mean, there's the chance that Melvin Gordon doesn't even work out how you hope to, and Danny Woodhead plays an even bigger role. And I love with Danny Woodhead in the passing game, and I think this could be a steal here at 103. Number 104, John Brown, wide receiver from Arizona. This is a guy that was a rookie last season, only had 48 receptions, but he was targeted 103 times, had 696 yards and 5 touchdowns. He showed big play potential. He had 8 or more targets 5 times. He had a season-high 5 receptions 3 times. But he also had 3 receptions or less 10 times. No more than 52 yards receiving in any of his first 6 games. But he did have 54 or more yards receiving 5 times in the final 10 games. So he was getting more involved later in the season. And that's what a rookie does. And really, just like Martavis Bryant, I expect this guy to have a bigger season than he had last year, and really any kind of decline out of Larry Fitzgerald. And if Michael Floyd doesn't turn into the kind of wide receiver that they hope he can be, I think that guy has high upside too. John Brown could step in and have a monster year. I still think he's going to have a better year than last year. And I see, when I said Larry Fitzgerald taking a decline, I just see you shaking your head in my peripheral.
Yeah, because I was just about to ask Easy, if you have to take one of Arizona's wide receivers, who are you going to take, Floyd, Fitzgerald, or Brown? I'm still taking Larry.
Not me.
You taking Michael Floyd, or are you taking John Brown?
It all depends what week. And
yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough with these.
If we're just talking drafting, I would draft Larry Fitzgerald before I drafted John Brown, I guess.
Yeah, me too. But how about Michael Floyd? That's who I have ranked the highest wide receiver.
I don't know too much about Floyd. I missed your recap on his.
Well, he was really good 2 years ago. Had somewhat of a down year last year. Was expected to have a huge year and become the number 1. He's expected to be the number 1 this year too. He needs to step up and be more consistent.
Plus, we talked about who's throwing those dudes the ball, and that's not really impressive either. So
yeah, that's the toughest part about being a wide receiver.
Questionable,
garbage quarterback, man.
I'm telling you though, John Brown as a rookie, over 100 targets. I really like his upside this season. Number 105. Anquan Bolden, wide receiver from San Francisco. He had 83 receptions last year on 130 targets, over 1,000 yards barely with 5 touchdowns. He had 9 or more targets 8 times, 5 or more receptions 10 times. He had one 100-yard game with 137 and a touchdown versus Washington. But look, he had 99 at Dallas, 95 at New Orleans, 94 at St. Louis, 93 versus St. Louis. So he dominated St. Louis.
You don't draft him though.
No, it's tough to
can't get 100. Can't get 100. That would. I would cut him after the 3rd week. Like if
I'm just saying, he had a 100-yard game, but he also had a lot of games where he had big yardage.
No, but I'm trying to get those extra points for that 100-yard game, and you're going to come a couple yards short each week.
Bolden's never been the fantasy stud. He's always been.
I mean, at one point he was for like 1 or 2 seasons he was there, but then he fell off. But he had all 5 of his TDs over his final 10 games as well. Colin Kaepernick, if he has any kind of a rebound this season, I mean, I see no reason why Anquan Bolden can't stay over 1,000 yards and maybe score more than 5 touchdowns this season. He's still going to be targeted a lot. They got Turi Smith, who they brought in to replace Crabtree. They have Vernon Davis still, who could be good. He may be a bust just like he was last season. They lost Stevie Johnson, brought in Jerome Simpson. There's a couple mediocre receivers. They have Bruce Ellington. I mean, they don't have a lot out here. Bolden should still be the number 1 target in the end. So he's still going to see a high number of receptions and probably get over 1,000 yards.
Kaepernick's garbage.
Number 106, Eddie Royal.
He's my sleeper. I think Eddie Royal's going to have a big year. He showed it in Denver playing with Jay Cutler before. He knows how to get open. Cutler knows how to get him the ball. And Brandon Marshall just rolled out of Chicago. So I think Eddie Royal could be one of those guys. At 106 is a good spot for him because he hasn't done anything yet. But he could shoot up real quick on that waiver wire.
Well, I wouldn't say he hasn't done anything. Over the past 2 seasons with San Diego, he does have 15 touchdowns. He finds a way into the end zone. Now, he had under 100 targets last season, but he scored those 7 TDs. He didn't get to 1,000 yards. But look, man, you're right. Marshall's gone. Kevin White's hurt. They got Elshon Jeffrey, obviously the number 1 out there. Marcus Wilson, Rashad Lawrence. I mean, they got some lesser-named guys out here. Eddie Royal should step in and be the second target out of the wide receivers. Martellus Bennett is obviously a good tight end. He's going to see a lot of targets still. Forte's targets are supposed to drop this season. So I see Eddie Royal having a good season with White hurt. And who knows, White, when he returns, he might not even do anything until next season now.
Yeah, it's tough as a rookie to miss the amount of time he's going to miss and be able to come back and make an impact.
Please believe. They also brought in Jacquez Rogers, by the way.
Who cares?
Number 107, Devontae. Jacquez Rogers? Yeah.
Okay.
Number 107, Devontae Parker, wide receiver from Miami. This was their first round pick, 14th overall out of Louisville. Now, they have Jarvis Landry in the slot, who I think is going to be their best receiver.
I agree.
And then they have Kenny Stills, currently listed as the number 1, with Greg Jennings currently the number 2. They also have Rashard Matthews. Now, remember, Wallace is gone. They also brought in Jordan Cameron as well. Draft Parker high. I mean, they brought in a lot of weapons for Tannehill after his big year, hoping he can improve from that. And Devontae Parker, I mean, they're going to have to get him involved because, let's face it, Greg Jennings is not the type of talent that Devontae Parker is.
How old's that dude now? 50?
Yeah, he's old.
Jeez.
If he tried to carry the team on his back, he would cripple.
Please believe. His disc would get herniated.
But look, I think Devontae Parker can actually step up and be the number 1, not the number 1 receiver, because, I mean, they're running Jarvis Landry out of the slot, but the number 1 outside guy, I believe. Devontae Parker and Landry could, by the end of the season, be the number 1 and number 2 receivers in this system, with Kenny Stills and Greg Jennings falling off, I believe.
A rare agreement between me and you, Dash.
He had foot surgery in June, though. He was recently removed from the PUP list. His status for the opener is still in question, but like I said, I'm not going to go take Kenny Stills or Greg Jennings over him in any way, because when he gets back and gets healthy, he is going to get involved in this offense, and he's going to help this offense. Number 108, David Cobb, running back from Tennessee.
What happened to Bishop Cuppo Sankey?
Well, a lot of people actually have Cobb and Sankey ranked right near each other, and I really don't like that. It's either going to be one or the other, and I already seen Sankey, so I'm done with him. But there's also Antonio Andrews, who could step up and be the guy too. I like Andrews more than Sankey too. I think it's either going to be Cobb or Andrews. Now, I was
Doc McClock, what about him?
Yeah, he's not a feature back or anything. He's a guy you use out of the backfield and sporadically
Tennessee's
here
with
and there.
now.
Yeah,
Wisenhunt know how to use them, though.
Dockster, McClockster.
Dockster. But
Sorry.
look, I was higher on Andrews earlier on, but now it sounds like David Cobb is the guy that's impressing coaches more than anyone else in his backfield. He was a 5th-round pick this year. He's 5'11", 229 pounds, and they think that he could be a 3-down back out there. Now, there is still the possibility Antonio Andrews takes the job, or Bishop Sankey. They could give it to him again. He led the team with 569 yards rushing last season. I mean, you know what you got out of him. I don't want to see it again. I'm either going, well, right now I'm going to go with Cobb because it looks like the coaches are higher on him, but I'm not going to forget about Antonio Andrews either. And it has a lot to do with what Mariota does as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, don't forget about him, because he's going to run the ball a lot this year. He's a big mobile guy, and usually young quarterbacks, their first read isn't there. They just kind of scurry on if they can. So he might end up being their leading rusher. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
It's possible.
That one's for Mariota. Welcome to the league, son.
Number 109, Trey Mason, running back from St. Louis.
The other thing that scares me about St. Louis backs is it's always somebody different.
Well, they got Todd Gurley out there now, too, let's not forget. But they're not sure if he's going to be ready for the season or not. It looks like he might miss the first couple games. That doesn't hurt his stock to me, though. I think Gurley's actually going to be a beast. I have him ranked high, and I'm sticking with that. I think Gurley is going to turn into a beast by the end of the season. But if he doesn't turn into a beast, Trey Mason should be the one that takes full advantage of that. I mean, he looked very good last season, in my opinion. Had 765 yards with 4 touchdowns in 12 games played. Had a touchdown in the air as well. He had 2 100-yard games with 117, his season high versus Oakland. He had a multi-TD game, but he also had 1 reception or less in 9 of 12 games. But let's not forget, they're bringing Nick Foles in now. I think he's a little bit better of a quarterback. And I expect Trey Mason to stay involved in the offense when Gurley does come back and when he takes over the number 1 role for St. Louis. I still think Mason is a useful piece, and I think he could be good out of the passing game, even though he didn't really show it last year. He looks like the type of back to me that if he can just catch, he could be used heavily in the passing game.
I think the Rams' offense is going to take a step forward this year. Nick Foles makes them instantly better. Not that he's, a number 1 Peyton Manning type guy, but he's way better than Sam Bradford. I never had any faith in Bradford.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt, but last year your pop was Toby Gerhart. Is this year your pop Foles in St. Louis?
At the quarterback position, it could be, man, because Nick Foles' first year, I think he only threw, 3 picks the whole season and 27 touchdowns. He's efficient, and he knows how to get the ball to his playmakers. He doesn't try to be the Peyton Manning or the Tom Brady. He doesn't want to put the team on his back. He just wants to get the ball in the hands of his playmakers and get the ball downfield.
Foles just got hexed.
Well, I want to say 2 things. First of all, nobody has Foles ranked in the 200 for some reason. He will be ranked in my top 200. And secondly, Benning Cunningham is also in his backfield, and he was used mostly out of the passing game last year. So while I say Mason looks like a guy that could be used in the passing game, it could be Benny Cunningham again this year, while Trey Mason is left out a little bit when Gurley comes back. So we'll have to see. I still like Trey Mason's upside, though, in case anything would happen to Gurley where he isn't at full strength at any point or he just can't cut it for some reason. But Trey Mason has a lot of upside, and I'll take a chance on him here.
Anybody who has Bradford ranked above Foles is just out of their mind.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Number 110, Antonio Gates, tight end from San Diego.
Beast, love this dude.
Well, here's the thing. He's suspended for the first 4 games of the season, obviously.
Why?
So that's...
Did he take steroids for his
PEDs?
foot?
Yeah, he took something.
For his foot, no kidding.
Yeah, he said it was, just something in a medicine that he took, and he didn't know it was in it. But you got to read the label, Holmes.
Yeah, keep your game up, Gates.
I mean, that's why he's listed at this spot for me. Now, there's a lot of guys that are going to miss some time that I have ranked higher, but tight end's just not one of those positions for me because he's also not the same type of tight end he used to be. He's not that elite tight end. So I'll wait on him and grab a couple other tight ends ahead of him. But if you miss out on him, I mean, it isn't bad to have Antonio Gates stashed on your bench over the first 4 games and then come in with him starting week 5 or whatever. But 69 receptions last year on 99 targets, 821 yards, but he did score 12 TDs. No 100-yard games. He had 96 versus Seattle and 92 at SF, so easy doesn't want him. He had 4 multi...
I don't want you to get 99, 94, 93 and rob me every week of valuable points I need to win. PPR.
That's it. Bonus.
See, I'd rather have the guys that have 90 consistently rather than a guy that has over 100.
And that's why you haven't won a fantasy league in how long now?
Oh, I've won fantasy leagues.
Yeah, 8 years ago.
Nah, you're out of your mind.
Talking football fantasy, not baseball dynasty.
No, I haven't won that baseball dynasty. I won football fantasy frickin' championships more recent than that.
All right, I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, you better watch out this year, fool. Look,
I'm
he had
not
4
I'm
multi...
not even in that league.
Oh,
I better
send you an invite.
I better sign up. I might have deleted it. All right, move. Yeah, keep it going.
Yeah, let's try to keep this
I
going.
need to do. So I need this info because I'm lost. I haven't even started getting into it yet.
You're not lost. You're listening right now. You know,
That's what I'm saying. I've listened to all the segments, but I'm behind. I don't think hardcore people are into it right now, but I'm behind. I need to catch up.
That's what you get for having a job and a house payment.
All right, let's move on. Gates, he had 4 multi-TD games with 3 TDs versus Seattle. He had 7 or more targets 8 times, 5 or more receptions 7 times. While he's out, there's a guy I've always liked here in San Diego that just doesn't get the playing time because Antonio Gates is there, and that's Ladarius Green. Now, I'm not going to have him ranked anywhere near here, but those first 4 games, if you happen to get Gates at the very end of the draft, grab Ladarius Green maybe.
LDG.
And he can give you some points while Gates is out. And then when Gates comes back, you're ready to roll. But Ladarius Green's a guy that is very good in the passing game. Number 111, Jordan Cameron, tight end from Miami.
Interesting that you have Gates ranked above him, even with Gates missing 4 games.
Yeah, that was the cutoff for me.
Did he?
Yeah, I mean, he can't stay healthy. That's the one problem Cameron has had. He had 24.
Gates was beat up also, too.
Well, he
Still
stayed
produced.
somewhat healthy. I mean, he produced.
Did stay healthy?
He had 12 touchdowns. I mean,
Okay.
that's
What
something.
did Cameron have last year?
He had 2 touchdowns, 24 receptions for 424 yards. He did get 48 targets, and it was over 10 games played. He had 1 100-yard game versus Pittsburgh. It was for 102 yards. He had 88 at Carolina. That was his second highest. He had 4 receptions or less in all 10 games. He had 3 or less in 9 of those games. Look, that was with Cleveland, though. Obviously,
Right.
their quarterback
No quarterback,
situation is
yeah.
horrible. So coming over to Miami, it can't do anything but help him. And if you look at Charles Clay last season, he had 58 receptions on 84 targets, 605 yards, and 3 TDs. I think Jordan Cameron is a better talent than Charles Clay, although they're pretty close. I like Clay, too. And that was in 14 games as well. So if Jordan Cameron can stay healthy, he has a shot to put up some decent numbers here. I'm going to take Antonio Gates and wait my 4 games, though, and you can take Jordan Cameron.
I don't want Cameron. I'm just saying it was interesting.
Well, I was telling Easy that.
No, I'm not.
I'm not big on Cameron.
I don't need him either.
He had that big year 2 years ago.
Like I said, they have a
I'd
lot of
rather
weapons
take
out
Heath
there,
Miller.
too, that they got to spread around that ball for Tannehill. I mean, Landry, Stills, Greg Jennings, Devontae Parker eventually. Rashard Matthews I like. I mean, they got a bunch of receivers out there. Lamar Miller is even a guy they got to get the ball to.
Well, this dude at 112 has fell off, hasn't he?
112, Owen Daniels, tight end for Denver now, though, man.
Yeah, well, that's about the only team that can revive him.
Well, look, last year he had 48 catches on 79 targets, 527 yards, and 4 TDs. That was with Baltimore. He had 1 multi-TD game. He had a season high of 70 yards receiving at Indy. He had 5 or more receptions 4 times. If you look at what Denver did at the tight end last season, I mean, Julius Thomas scored a lot of touchdowns, 12 TDs in 13 games, but he only had 60 targets too, 43 receptions, and 489 yards. They got Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders out there who are going to command a ton of targets. Cody Latimer's going to get some targets as well. C.J. Anderson needs featured in this backfield. Owen Daniels isn't going to get too many targets, but I think Peyton Manning can keep him relevant in this system.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, look at the last 3 guys we talked about. Gates with San Diego, Cameron, who was with Cleveland, and now Daniels, who was with Baltimore. Now, Gates is with Rivers. He got 12 touchdowns out of a dude who's real old and has a bad foot. Cameron was at Cleveland with Bubby Hoyer and Johnny Manziel. He got nothing done because his quarterbacks were garbage. Owen Daniels, Flacco's not garbage, but he's no Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning got Julius Thomas 12 touchdowns. A good quarterback knows how to use his tight end in the red zone, is the point I'm trying to make. So even though Owen Daniels' targets might be a little less and his receptions won't be there, the touchdowns will probably still be there because Peyton knows how to use a big guy in the red zone. Smart quarterbacks use their tight end.
Quick 7 points for you.
All right, let's move on to number 113 here. A guy that's very inconsistent.
And it's scary because he has a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that works out, though. Kendall Wright, wide receiver from Tennessee. 57 receptions last year on 93 targets, 715 yards with 6 touchdowns. That was over 14 games played. He had 1 100-yard game with 132 at Houston. He had 1 multi-TD game. He had 7 or more targets 18 times, He had 5 or more receptions in 5 of his first 7 games, but just once in his final 7 games. They brought in Harry Douglas. They drafted Dorial Green-Beckham. They brought in Hakeem Nicks. They still have Justin Hunter. So there's a lot of questions still, but really Kendall Wright is the top talent that is running with the first team right now. Dorial Green-Beckham is a little behind. He's playing with the second team. I actually expect him to jump up and eventually be the number 1 receiver. I don't know if it's going to be this season or not. It might take this guy a year to get used to professional football. But Kendall Wright, I mean, he's going to see most of the targets out of the wide receivers, I believe. I don't think it's going to be Harry Douglas to start the season.
I laugh every time I hear Harry Douglas.
HD.
I'm immature.
They have Anthony Fasano out there, too. I don't think he's going to command too many targets. So Kendall Wright, I mean, he's still a young guy. He could become more consistent. Maybe Mariota will help out there as well. So Kendall Wright could be a decent receiver for you. I don't expect much more than he had last season, though. Maybe a little over 800 yards. I don't see a ton of TDs. 6 like last season isn't out of the question at all.
It's hard to say how any of these playmakers for Tennessee are going to do just because you have a rookie quarterback, and that's such a big question mark.
Number 114, our favorite player here, Turi Smith, wide receiver from San Francisco.
Bastard.
He had 49 receptions on 93 targets for 767 yards, but he did put up 11 touchdowns last season. His highest
Deep speed.
He had no 100-yard games. His highest total was 98 at New Orleans. He had more than 8 targets just once all season. He had 6 receptions once, but he had 3 receptions or less 9 times. He had 3 multi-TD games. Last year, San Francisco had Crabtree, who I think is, I wouldn't say similar to Torrey Smith. I think he's better than Torrey Smith, actually. But they both don't catch a very high number of targets in my mind. Crabtree had 68 receptions on 108 targets last year for 698 yards and 4 touchdowns. Torrey Smith's a bigger touchdown guy, so I could see similar numbers to Crabtree with a little bit more touchdowns maybe, but I could see less receptions and targets as well, with more going towards Anquan Bolden, Vernon Davis, and Reggie Bush they brought over now. They have to try to get him involved in the passing game somehow. But it depends on Colin Kaepernick, really. He has to be better than he was last season, or really they got to find another quarterback.
I hate Torrey Smith. I know all this stuff you said about him's legit, but I wouldn't take him just because I hate him.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take guys. There's are guys that you need to sit here and say, no matter what I'm not taking, just scratch them off the list. I can't really do that while doing rankings.
Right.
But there are guys you have to say, hey, there's no way in hell. D'Angelo Williams was always one of those guys to me I would never touch. I wouldn't draft him at pick 450.
And now he's going to start for you opening night.
Possibly. Well, it's totally different.
Not
in
fantasy, in
Pittsburgh
real life,
Steelers
I mean.
system.
Yeah.
All right, number 115, Zach Ertz, tight end from Philadelphia.
He didn't put the Ertz on anybody last year, and I was sticking up for this dude the whole time.
Well, look, man.
You're beat, Ertz.
He was young, very young last season. He had 58 receptions on 86 targets. He still had 702 yards. He needs to find the end zone more this season. He only had 3 touchdowns. But look, he did have a 100-yard game with 15 receptions for 115 yards at Washington. He had 86 at Indy, 77 versus Jacksonville. But he did have 4 receptions or less in all but 2 games. So he needs to be more involved. And I think he is going to be more involved in this offense this season. They have Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar, who I both like out there. Macklin's gone. I think they're going to get Zach Ertz involved along with Matthews and Aguilar in this offense this season. Sam Bradford, and I know you're hating on him, but he's not as bad as you think. I think they're going to be pretty decent on offense still.
Beat. He'll be hurt in week 3, and they'll have freaking butt fumble headband in there, and then he's going to get hurt. And
well,
then
he looked good last season too, if you remember.
Tim Tebow is going to come in and run wild on you, brother.
2 words. Darren Sproles.
You loving Darren Sproles.
Forever. Fantasy genius.
Number 116, Delaney Walker, tight end from Tennessee. He actually led the team in receptions last year, targets and yards as well. Had 63 receptions on 108 targets for 890 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was targeted 9 or more times in 5 games. He had 2 100-yard games, including 155 at Philly and 10 catches for 142 yards and a touchdown versus Dallas. Had 93 versus the Jets. He has a thumb injury right now. He's wearing a soft cast. He's expected to be ready for the beginning of the season. But this is a guy I think Mariota will target a good bit this season.
How do you wear there a soft cast on your thumb? I always think that's funny when I read stuff like that. What do you just have, like one of those metal things, tape a popsicle stick to it? You know what I mean? Like, come on.
What's wrong with that? You can't do that?
I just think
You're not down with it?
It's just weird. Soft cast on your thumb just sounds weird to me. It's your thumb.
Let's move on to number 117. Shane Vereen, running back from the New York Giants. This is a scary pick, though.
Yeah,
but
he's another one of those guys that is boom or bust on a given day.
Yeah, Eli Manning definitely has to find a way to get him the ball in the passing game. I mean, this guy doesn't get too many carries, but he did have 52 receptions on 447 yards last season, found the end zone 3 times in the air, 2 on the ground. But he's not going to be used much in the running game. He's going to be used more in the passing game. Look, he had 5 or more receptions 5 times last season. He had 1 multi-TD game in the air. And Rashad Jennings, Andre Williams, they're going to be used in the run game. Hopefully they find a way to let Eli Manning get Vereen the ball in the passing game. I mean, he got to find targets for Beckham and Cruz, and they got James Jones, Ruben Randall, Preston Parker, obviously, so he has a lot of targets out there. But they brought Shane Vereen in for a reason, and it has to be to use him in the passing game. And look, at number 117...
They brought him in because he knows all the Patriots' plays.
I doubt that they're
cheat.
thinking if they play him in the Super Bowl again, they know what's up because of Shane Vereen. But look, at pick 117, this is where you start taking chances because you can drop guys here. If they don't work out,
right.
You drop them and you go find someone on the waiver wire that is a true fantasy sleeper. Fantasy
can
sleepers
be a good
are guys
flex player.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, this is a point where you take the chance, and if he is using the passing game like people hope, then you found good value in him here.
Well, what's a fantasy sleeper?
A fantasy sleeper is a guy that no one talks about, really. I mean, you have to go find a guy that isn't on anyone's list at all and say this guy's going to come out and have a good season. That's a real sleeper. It's not a guy at pick 60 that you think's worth a pick 20. That's not a sleeper. But let's move on to number 118 here. Another guy, this is a risky pick, but it could pay off in different ways. I mean, Ryan Matthews, running back for Philadelphia now. He only had 330 yards last season and 3 touchdowns, but he only played 6 games. He was injured most of the season. In 2013, he had 1,255 yards rushing with 6 touchdowns. And if you look, Philadelphia last year, McCoy ran for 1,300 yards, had 5 touchdowns, 28 receptions for 155 yards. But they did bring in DeMarco Murray to be the feature back in this system. They still have Darren Sproles there, who should be the guy used in the passing game. He had 40 receptions last season. So really, I don't see much room for Ryan Matthews in this offense unless it's just to spell DeMarco Murray. But there's also the fact that DeMarco Murray ran the ball a ton last year. They gave him the ball so much that you've seen it a million times where when they touch the ball that much, sometimes they just fall apart, and Murray just might not last the season. And if that happened, Ryan Matthews would become one of the best backs to have in fantasy. But it's a guy you want to take a chance on here around 120 just because of that upside. If Murray doesn't work out as they hoped, or if something happened to Sproles as well, I mean, Matthews would have to see a larger role. So, I mean, he's going to be involved in this offense somewhat, but you're not going to get much out of him unless Murray goes down and or Sproles goes down as well. Number 119, Dorial Green-Beckham, another guy that has upside, but you just got to take a chance and see what happens. Second-round pick in this year's draft for Tennessee out of Oklahoma. He's 6'5", 237 pounds.
Huge.
Yeah, this is a big guy, and he could turn out to be the number 1 receiver, and that's why you take a chance on him here. And if it doesn't work out, drop him, grab something else. But he's running with the second team right now, like I was saying before. But I'm telling you, he's going to work his way up the list. He's a better receiver than all these guys. Kendall Wright, Harry Douglas, Hakeem Nicks, Justin Hunter. He has more upside than all these guys. And now Wright might have the better season than him by the end of this year. Long term, Green-Beckham's going to be the better receiver, I believe. But it could be this year as well. So I'm taking a chance here on him.
In a keeper league, he's an interesting pick.
Please believe.
Because he could become beast.
Number 120, Ryan Tannehill, quarterback from Miami. He had 4,045 yards, 27 touchdowns with 12 picks last season. He also added 311 yards rushing with a touchdown. He had two 300-yard games, with 396 being a season high versus Minnesota. He had 8 multi-TD games and at least 31 attempts in all but one game. Like I said, they brought in a ton of options around him. Now, that may not mean a ton of points for any one player in this offense, but I think Tannehill has a good shot to succeed in this offense this season.
Remember when we were kids, Easy, and they had the 3,000-yard club cards, and there would be like 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks in the league that would throw for 3,000 yards. Now you got freaking Ryan Tannehill throwing for over 4,000.
Well, he looked very good last season, man, and if he can even stay pace with that, he's going to have an even better season, I believe. But if he shows any kind of improvement, he could have a big season. I'm still taking these other quarterbacks ahead of him that we were mentioning, like an Eli Manning. Who? How about that one? Would you rather have Ryan Tannehill or Eli Manning?
Ryan.
You rather have Ryan Tannehill?
Obviously.
All day, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Eli had more touchdowns last year. He had more yards. I mean, what do you want?
I don't like Eli as a fantasy starting quarterback. I just don't. I never did.
So would you put Tannehill higher or just Eli Manning lower?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm putting Ryan Tannehill, right up. I would swap them two. I would do that.
You would just swap those two. All right, let's move on to 121. Allen Hurns, wide receiver from Jacksonville. He was a rookie last year, had 51 receptions for 677 yards and 6 touchdowns. So it's a pretty nice year out of a rookie. He had 2 100-yard games with 2 TDs in each of those games. His best game was 7 receptions, 112 yards with 2 touchdowns at Cincinnati. He had 26 yards or less 8 times, though. And that's the inconsistencies you're going to get out of a rookie wide receiver, especially with a rookie quarterback as well. Now you got your quarterback in a second-year receiver here. They're probably going to work a little bit better together this season. I think Allen Robinson is still the highest upside guy here, but Allen Hurns, I believe, is going to take an uptick in value as well. And I think both of these guys are going to be pretty decent receivers this season. And I think Blake Bortles is going to take a step up as well. But don't forget, Julius Thomas is out there. He's going to command some targets as well. And Marquise Lee's another guy that is going to get involved in this offense. I think Allen Hurns is the second best choice out of these two, out of this receiver core. Well, Julius Thomas is up there above these guys.
I wonder who Blake Bortles is banging. Got to be somebody hot.
Blake Brothels.
I put Blake Bortles. All right, number 122.
Getting some defenses in the mix already.
Yeah, it's time to go defense. Like I said, I was giving you some high upside guys that are also high risk guys here in the past couple picks. So let's go defense now. Seattle's defense at 122. They were first against the pass last year with 185.6 yards per game, third against the run with 81.5 yards per game. They had the 20th most sacks with 37. They were 18th in interceptions with 13 and had 2 interceptions for TDs. So those numbers are
Willie Gay had 3 himself.
Yeah, please believe. But they were 15th in fumble recoveries with 10. The big thing is, though, is they don't let up points. They were least in points allowed with 15.9. And other categories, they can go up and down from season to season. You never know what you're going to get, but you know they're not going to let up many points with Seattle's defense. So I still have them as the number 1 D in fantasy.
You said they're first against the pass. Well, it's not that hard when you have Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, and Cam Chancellor in your defensive backfield.
Please believe.
It's just ridiculous.
Let's not forget they lost Maxwell, though.
Although Cam Chancellor is holding out and could hold out into the season, and Earl Thomas is coming off a pretty serious ailment. I don't even want to call it an injury. It was more of an ailment.
All right, let's stick with defense here. Number 123, Houston's defense.
I think and I'm not even saying this fantasy-wise, but they have a shot at being great this year. Houston's defense. Just outstanding.
I mean, last year they weren't great against the run or pass in terms of yardage. I mean, they were 10th against the run with 105.1 yards per game. They were 21st against the pass with 243.1 yards per game. And they were 19th in sacks with 38, but they came up big in the interception department. They were 3rd with 20. and they were opportunistic as well. They tied Pittsburgh for the most interceptions for TDs with 4, and they were second in fumble recoveries with 14, and also returned one of those for a touchdown. So they score points that way for you, and they were 7th. They let up the 7th least most points as well at 19.2. And like you said, they're even going to get better this season.
Well, what were they against the run? You said they struggled a little bit
10th.
against the run. They
I mean, I wouldn't say struggled. It's still 10th isn't terrible.
They have Vince Wilfork now. They added Jadeveon Clowney's going to be playing this year, and they also added inside linebacker Benardrick McKinney in the draft. And I know he's a rookie, but still, when you have J.J. Watt, Vince Wilfork, and the jury's still out on Clowney, we haven't been able to see him play, but if he plays anything like he did in college, good Lord, is the quarterback in trouble. And then they have Kareem Jackson, Kevin Johnson, and Jonathan Joseph in the defensive backfield. Like, seriously, man, if they all play to their potential, and that's an if, but if these guys play to their potential, this could be, one of those defenses that just has a historic, one-season run. Now they have nobody at quarterback, so...
I mean, it's possible more than one season as well.
Right, but I'm just saying, they could just have a beast year.
All right, let's move on to number 124 here. Jason Witten, tight end from Dallas. He had 64 receptions on 90 targets for 703 yards and 5 TDs last season. His best game, 7 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown versus Indy. He had 4 receptions or less 10 times, 33 yards or less 8 times. But look, they have Des Bryant and they have Des Bryant. Who do they have out there? Really no one. Now, look, they lost to Marco Murray. He was featured in their offense last season. He ate up a lot of the touches in that offense. He's gone. Now, I do like Joseph Randle out there, but he's not going to command the amount of touches that Murray is. Terrence Williams not a high target type player. He's more of a big play type guy at once or twice a game. Devin Street, Cole Beasley, I don't see these as high targets guy. Yeah, high target guys. I don't see Darren McFadden playing a big role in this offense. Jason Witten is actually a guy that could see more targets this season just because I don't see Romo having as good of a season. It's going to be Des Bryant and then Jason Witten in my mind. I see Witten having a better season than he had last year.
I agree because just like you said, Murray took up all the touches. Somebody's got to get these touches. And they got no receivers. Des Bryant, that's it. He's not going to get no 16 touchdowns this year either.
I don't think so either. Number 125, Reggie Bush, running back from San Francisco. If you look last year, he didn't do much on the ground. 297 yards with 2 touchdowns in 11 games. But he did come up with 40 receptions, still had 253 yards, but no touchdowns in the air as well. He had no more than 12 carries in any game. This is all with Detroit, mind you. He's playing for San Fran now, so things could change. But he had 7 carries or less 7 times. He had 5 or more receptions 4 times. And if you look, Gore and Hyde combined for 23 receptions last season. So really, they weren't passing a lot to their running backs last year either. And now Reggie Bush, a guy who had huge upside in his day, he's 30 years old. I can't picture him as the feature back in between the tackles. Is San Francisco going to be able to use their running backs in the passing game this season? There's a lot of questions. The one thing, the why I have him at 125 is, like I said, you got to take chances. Carlos Hyde is not a guy that is proven by any means either. So there's a great chance that he is not what he's expected to be, and Reggie Bush does step in and become the number 1 guy. But it is pretty scary to have Reggie Bush as your top running back. I mean, you were saying that they're already with Reggie Bush as the number 1 guy, correct?
That's what I was reading. He
was never really an in-between-the-tackles type runner, but there is that upside of him where they have to find a way to get him involved in the passing game. So they have to be passing to their running backs more. Is Colin Kaepernick going to flip a switch and get Reggie Bush the ball out of the backfield a ton in the passing game?
Was Reggie with the Saints when they won the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I believe so.
He's been kind of a bust throughout his career for all the hype that he had.
I mean, there were years where he had huge fantasy seasons. I remember he was ranked like as a 5th round running back or something, and I drafted him 12th overall, and I was taking all this hate for it, dude. And he was such a beast that season. He was returning like 2 punts a game for touchdowns. Remember when he was a beast in the return game, man? He came up with like 90 receptions as well. Reggie Bush, I mean, there's a lot of downside here, but there's also some upside here. So I'll take a chance on him. If he doesn't work out, I'll drop him and pick someone else up.
One thing I think that works against Reggie, this is inside information that I'm getting. The field at Levi Stadium is just god-awful. And teams aren't even wanting to play on it. So that bad field could hurt Reggie a little bit because he's like a scat back. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't take him or anything. I'm just saying he might have a little bit of troubles on that field, that's all. But that's it. That's all we got for you. 101 to 125. Thank you, fans, for hanging in with us. Thank you, Dash and Big Easy, for coming in. Fans, if you got any questions or comments, hit us up on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Hit me up on Twitter at betjimthewin. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/betthespread. Keep coming back to YouTube. Keep clicking subscribe.